as a reminder, this will be recorded and it will be housed on our Business Career Services YouTube page that I just added to the chat box if you want to access that later. We have 50 minutes set aside for this session today, and we have 3, hopefully soon to be 4 panelists here to answer the questions that I have for our panelists, as well as those that hopefully you all will contribute as well. I asked this as people were trickling in just before 5 o'clock, but I do ask if you are in a space where you're able to turn on your video that you would join us in that capacity. Makes this a more interactive experience for everyone. So our panelists don't feel like they're just talking to names on a Zoom board and that we can interact with one another that way as well. Finally, we have a door prize, if you will, for the end of this panel that Epes has so generously provided for us. And so Taylor will be taking down names, and at the end of this workshop, we will be spinning a wheel to see who receives that prize. So be sure to stick around for that. All right, I believe that that is all that I have for me. So I want to turn it over to our panelists that are here. And I just want to ask that you all introduce yourselves. And Hanna Williamson, if you would like to go ahead and start for us.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. I might be one of the further ones away. I'm actually up in Boston, Massachusetts. I am a senior corporate recruiter with Beacon Hill Staffing. I do work actually out of our Boston headquarters, so definitely excited to chat with a lot of you guys today. You know, ultimately, as I feel like I spend majority of my day actually in LinkedIn, so I have a really good read on a lot of what we're going to talk about as a recruiter. In addition to that, just to give a brief insight, I guess, to my background, I graduated in 2016, so not too far off of a lot of your shoes. Worked in sales and then jumped into recruiting, and have been with Beacon Hill for about 3.5 years, specifically focusing on our entry-level hiring. So definitely excited to meet with a bunch of you guys today.
Excellent. And then Hanna, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Hanna Rozyyev. You can just call me Hanna. I know that there's a lot of Hannas in this group today, but my last name is a little bit funky, so don't be afraid to mispronounce it. But yeah, I am our recruiter here at Rush Enterprises. I focus on sales and customer service talent. So I focus on finding people that are great with people. And so we are headquartered in Texas. So I'm excited to come visit some of you in person here in a few days and see some mountains and maybe a little bit more fresh weather than I'm used to out here in Texas. But yeah, Rush is a transportation and logistics oriented company because we support the trucking industry. So in case any of you don't know about Rush, we're the largest commercial dealership in the U.S. So the Peterbilts, the Internationals, all the large trucks you see on the road, they might have bought it from Rush. They probably get their parts from Rush, and they might get service from Rush. So that's kind of our industry in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Ashley.
I'm Ashley Scarborough. I am the talent acquisition manager for Epes Transport. We are the largest truckload carrier in North Carolina. We have been around since 1931. I do all of the hiring for non-drivers. So if you are not in a tractor, you're in the office, you're somebody I'm probably going to talk to. We do anything from customer service all the way up to executive level positions. The biggest one that we kind of recruit for at colleges and stuff like that is the Career Path program, which is a trainee program for all recent grads, kind of get an exposure to the whole trucking industry along with all of the departments and how everything kind of flows. We work with companies like Walmart and Family Dollar, Lowe's, Home Depot, and all that. But the biggest one that we recruit for is the Career Path.
Excellent. Thank you, ladies, so much for taking some time to introduce yourselves and a little bit about what you recruit for as well. Students and attendees, please take that as some context as they answer that we have a wide variety of industries that are here on this panel. So keep that in mind as they answer their questions. So let's hit it off. And I'm going to ask, when you ladies are looking for candidates, does your company have a practice of looking at the online presence of candidates? And if so, what engines do you use for that?
I can take that.
Awesome.
So Handshake is the biggest one for us right now with college students. That is probably where we post a lot of our positions. They do not go on our main careers page. That's just to kind of help lessen the resumes that we go through that are not qualified. Another one that we use a lot is the LinkedIn search. I have a recruiter seat and do a lot of searches through there. I do also do a little bit of research on the back end when there are resumes that are submitted and stuff like that. So I not only look at the resume, but I also check out LinkedIn and everything just to see if there's a few things that you have, clubs, activities, stuff that you do on campus that may not be on your resume, because involvement is one of the biggest things that we like to see on a recent grad resume.
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in on that too. I would definitely echo, Handshake is huge. I think especially for a lot of recent college grads, one, even just from the flip side, to be able to even understand an online presence of a company, that Handshake profile is really helpful for you to get to know us, and your profiles are really helpful for us to get to know you. So even as much as, I'm spending time on LinkedIn, I've also, with a lot of Handshake, have really gotten a chance to look through different people's profiles, to look at what classes they've taken, or like campus involvements, or fun projects that you have that you can actually link to. So I definitely would say that that's really helpful, in addition to utilizing a lot of like LinkedIn Recruiter, where from a recruiter perspective, we can actually go in and filter out by keywords, by location, by previous employers, really find you guys who we think we would like to actually target for a lot of our campus recruiting efforts. So I think that that's a big platform, but using any of those, I think, in a way to develop your online portfolio is definitely very helpful. If there's just like a link, quick, oh, I worked on this project, awesome, add it. It's definitely where, we'd be curious to see a lot of that kind of stuff.
I would add that sometimes for entry level, I do look at other social media, such as Facebook. Oftentimes LinkedIn kind of gives me a better perspective as far as a professional candidate. But if it's for something more entry level, sometimes I do look at Facebook just to make sure that, especially if I see like a red flag in an interview, I might follow up on Facebook just to kind of see if that red flag might be a little bit consistent with their profile there. And so I would encourage you, and this might come up later in the discussion, I would encourage you to match, the professionalism you have on LinkedIn should be matched on your other social media as well, because a lot of it is more public than you realize.
Yes, great point. And we will touch on that a little bit later. Googling yourself, seeing what comes up, whether it's from social media or other websites where your name might be featured. For sure. So you all mentioned Handshake and LinkedIn, as well as other social media, but Handshake and LinkedIn are two things that our students are certainly familiar with. And we try to coach the use of those things as much as possible. However, my next question is, I would really love your perspective when you look at a Handshake or a LinkedIn profile. I know they're similar in a lot of ways, but sometimes you're able to highlight some different things from one to the other. When you look at those at a first glance, what are the things that you look for right off?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I mean, right
Awesome.
off, the first thing that's going to pop up is your photo. I think this is really something that is your time to, throw on a blazer. It's your time to, put on your professional attire, whatever it may be, but it's just a way for you to have not necessarily you, with your friends or in a group shot, but really I think focusing in just on your face and making it as professional as possible. It's very straightforward, very simple, but I think it is definitely something that is really important just to, make sure that we can see who you are, and ultimately that, you kind of put your best professional foot forward, at least to have that photo. I think, we'll probably touch upon a lot of this, but that's where, we ultimately are searching the name, it's popping up. We're then looking at the profile. The rest kind of falls chronologically, but seeing maybe where you went to school, seeing what types of internships you've had, your campus involvements, everything really about you that I think sometimes on a resume only just gives you 3 bullet points. LinkedIn, I feel like, is your kind of time to elaborate a little bit more on your portfolio and actually maybe add a bit more detail or add in those links to major projects that you've had a chance to work on, or a paper that you got a chance to write, or whatever it may be. But I think you can add a bit more context as opposed to your resume feeling a bit more condensed down.
I agree. I would say just make sure that everything is on your LinkedIn. And even if Handshake and LinkedIn mirror each other, I look for activities, different clubs. Internships are huge for us. We love to see students that have internship experience because they kind of know, maybe if it's in a trucking company, they kind of know what to expect, different things like that. I think LinkedIn is probably the biggest for me when it comes to different like companies that you follow, or other, people that you follow on LinkedIn, different groups that you're connected with. A big thing for us is to see what kind of supply chain logistics or information systems or whatever groups you're following, so that you kind of see everything. But they also do postings as far as positions and stuff. We've posted in groups as well. So I would say that LinkedIn's probably the biggest for me as far as making sure that everything, like Hanna said, is on there. This is your way to show not only your professionalism, but what you've done. And a resume is normally kept to a page and a half. And you're not going to put as much on a resume because you're going to be speaking about it anyways on an interview. But the LinkedIn profile is exactly what I would add everything to.
Yes. I want to echo that as well, because at some recent career fairs, I've been given resumes and seen LinkedIn profiles that do not include some of their work history, and they think, oh, well, I just worked for my, family's company for 6 months and I didn't think that mattered. I'm like, well, it does matter, especially if you're a young professional. You need to show any kind of work experience, even if you think personally, oh, it's not that professional or it doesn't relate to, my degree plan. Put it on there, show us that you have been working towards, your education and towards a career path.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So my next question, so it sounds like the 3 of you do a lot of looking at LinkedIn yourselves, because you all have very strong opinions, which I love. So when you are sharing, or when you're looking at LinkedIn rather, how do you go about sharing that information with the person that's in the next step of that hiring process? So that internal person, not the candidate, but your own colleagues. How do you go about sharing that information about, hey, I saw this on LinkedIn? How does that work within your company?
So I download the PDFs normally for the profiles if I'm going to be sharing it with a hiring manager. I also do, when I do the searches and stuff, we have Boolean searches. So we look for keywords and everything, and I will save them in a project. And I can actually, because of my recruiter chair, I can share them with the talent acquisition specialist that also works alongside myself. But I also have a few other team members that work with the career path trainees and stuff like that. So they also need to see it. So I will save projects and share those with them and just see who they are interested in, if they're interested in anyone, and kind of reaching out that way.
Yeah, I would definitely say that too. I mean, we have a very similar, probably LinkedIn access, but to be able to utilize those projects, I think one added point in terms of even just like building out your online presence, especially on LinkedIn, is if you know you're targeting very specific jobs, put that into I'm open to new opportunities. I'm looking for this. I think I like this, where I'm looking to be, your location wise, because we can see that on our end. That ultimately is going to help us find you. So if you're really targeting something very specific in one exact industry and you're only looking to stay, let's say, at opportunities in Raleigh, North Carolina, put that onto your profile. You can say I'm open to an internship, to a part-time job, to, a full-time job, whatever it may be. I think that's going to help you even in your own search and utilizing so that a recruiter on the other end can then be able to actually message out to you and it'll make sense because they said, hey, it looks like you're open to opportunities in Raleigh. What are you looking to do? Let's talk a little bit more about this. So just to add that sort of on there, I think we can filter out from, keywords that we look for, but you can also filter out so that you can ultimately find the opportunities that are going to be a good fit for you too.
I would kind of similar to what Ashley said, I do have pretty good relationships with my hiring managers and I trust them to, make the appropriate moves as well. So I'll just send, if like one of you were to send me a request or if I were to find one of you while searching on LinkedIn, I would simply just share your profile with the hiring manager and say, hey, what do you think of Sloan or Allie or Gabby? Is this somebody that you would want to meet with? And then, especially if you've already applied to a position, I like to kind of send it as a supplement. Here's their resume, here's their profile. That way they get the total picture.
Great. Thank you all so much for your insight. So panelists, I'm going to kind of have a little break off question based on the answers that you just shared with us, if that's all right. All of you have kind of alluded to that when you log on to LinkedIn, your view and your filtering capabilities are a bit different than just any ordinary user. Yes. And so I know that you are able to search all kinds of things. And Ashley, you mentioned keywords. So can you give students any insight into how important it is to include those keywords and maybe some of the best places that you like to see those keywords?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing for us is, I don't know if you guys know this, but the AS400 system is something that we utilize here, and it has been around since probably the dino ages. And a lot of companies use it, but if you're outside of trucking and transportation, very few companies use that. If you've used it, a lot of times people will put on their resumes, various systems or different things like that, but they don't use those actual keywords as far as the AS400, or on our driver recruiting side, we use 10th Street as our applicant tracking system. So having those keywords in the actual job that you've used them at, so understanding of or knowledge of, and then noting some of those on there, that is a way when I use those keywords in my searches that pulls your resume. And the more you match my search, the higher you are on the results. So I will see your profile before I see someone that only has 2 or 3 of those keywords when I have put in 6. It comes up immediately and it highlights them for me so that it's a talking point for us to kind of go into detail a little bit more about how you used them, what you used them for, different things like that. But it also lets me know what positions you use them into.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say, just adding off of that, granted, the industry that I'm in, I mean, we're hiring for entry-level recruiting and sales. So I think a great way to be able to sell yourself on LinkedIn is utilizing that bio section. That's kind of like a quick summary. Is like, hi, my name is Hanna Williamson. I am a senior at, this school. I major in this. And that's ultimately going to allow us to kind of pull those keywords as well. So if I might be looking for recent grad or, entry-level sales or entry-level marketing, I can actually put those kind of keywords in on my end. And if you put that actually in your bio, kind of using that as a selling point, as an automatic right below your picture, here's a little bit about me, then maybe that's going to pull you up more in my search. But I also think think, to echo, adding those keywords in so that it's not just the job title, but a little bit more about what you actually did in that job. So if we might be looking for a specific software, a specific system that you've had exposure to, that might pop up directly in a search as well. So I think just being mindful as for what you've actually done, elaborating a little bit further, and then those specific keywords, especially if it's an industry that you're excited about, are definitely going to come up a little bit further.
Great. Oh, go ahead, Hannah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I don't really have much more to add. I mean, like they said, try to put as much information as possible, because more information is better than less, in my opinion. I would rather see more to kind of go through than I've seen plenty of people that are like, yeah, I have LinkedIn. And then you look at their profile and they might have one position listed, no bio, no other, info. List even, I mean, I know something silly like, oh, presentation skills sounds kind of basic, but that's something that we're looking for. So go ahead and list that as a skill. That would be, just kind of furthering their thoughts on putting as much as possible.
I think going off of that though, don't put anything on there that you don't have experience with, because if you can't talk about it, don't put it on there, because if it's something we're looking for, we're going to ask about it. And if you can't talk about it, I mean, less is more, like when you don't have the experience or exposure to it. But if you do and you can speak on what you did with it, then add it on there for sure. I do have a lot of candidates that will put stuff on there and research systems that trucking companies use and then have no idea when I'm asking questions.
Not a good look. Not a good look at all. All right. So let's take that and run with it. Let's talk about a couple of things of what not to do, maybe some horror stories that you all have. So my first question along those lines is similar to that, Ashley. Have you ever seen a LinkedIn profile, been super jazzed about an interview with a candidate, meet with them or talk to them over the phone or video chat and realize this is not the same person?
Yes, I just recently had it, which is the reason that it popped into my head. I had a resume that looked great, a LinkedIn profile that looked even better. And when I got down to the systems, they had put on there that they had used, there were a few that we use company-wide, and basic questions. I mean, a lot of systems are tweaked a little bit to be customizable. So I knew that it would be exactly how we use it, but they couldn't talk on it at all. And I mean, it was to the point where it was noticeable, and I would have brought the candidate in for an on-site had their resume, or they'd been able to speak to the resume and everything that they had, used those systems and everything, but it was bad. It was great until we got to that overview of everything. And then it went really bad. And then finally they admitted to the fact that they had been in the environment where it was used, but they had not actually used it. So they knew what it was called, but they didn't know. And then there were a few others that they had Googled and added to it to get an interview. So they knew as a trucking company, we use the AS400. What they didn't know is how to use it or speak about it. So it was a really bad situation.
Yikes. Hannah, do you have any situations you can add to that?
I would just say that, kind of going back to the picture, you want to select a profile photo that is very professional. Like the other Hannah was saying, your friends don't belong in that photo, your spouse or, boyfriend, girlfriend doesn't belong in that photo. I've even seen dogs. I mean, like that stuff, kind of reserve that for Facebook and Instagram and whatnot, but keep it to really a professional headshot as far as LinkedIn goes. And then another thing that I've kind of seen is that I see as a personal turnoff is, sales candidates, and they might sell a way different product, but they're using like a selfie to sell something, or they're using a picture of themselves to sell something. Unless it's you next to a truck or you next to the product, then you don't need to be in the photo. Especially, dressed provocatively, that stuff, most of us recruiters just do not take you seriously at all after seeing that. So I know a lot of you might have way different majors in sales, but even if you're in marketing, even if you're anything that you're trying to represent your company, you don't want to mix yourself with the product or service that you provide, unless, it is in a professional setting. So the only photos of me that you'll see on LinkedIn is me at a career event or me with other people in my profession, doing something of a professional nature. No drinking, no, you guys know what I mean.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to mention that a little bit further because I knew we were going to talk about it. But another major thing that, I mean, granted, I don't think I can think of one exact horror story of what Ashley was saying, but I mean, looking at a profile and automatically catching a spelling error or a grammar issue. I mean, this is your online presence. How do you want to come across to an employer? Just as much in the same way that you want to come across to your professor, is that you know what you're talking about. If you're submitting a paper or you're submitting a homework assignment, you're probably not going to leave like your title as there's a spelling error in it, because you want to make sure that that's going to be a good grade that you get. Not to say that we're grading you on the other end, but we kind of are. That ultimately we want to see that. It's a level of professionalism so you can ultimately get into the working world and know that you're not going to have a spelling error in your title or in one aspect of, the written piece of your blurb or your about me. So that's a way to sell yourself, is that you do have that written verbal communication ultimately. So put it right there and do a quick glance over, making sure that things look good.
Great. So also to go along with that, Hanna, you just mentioned some deal breakers. Hanna or Ashley, do you all have any other deal breakers that when you see it, you're like kind of an immediate, probably not this one? That's a huge red flag.
I have gone through past activity, posts, shares, likes, comments and stuff like that too, just to see, not to catch anyone in anything, but just to see if they're interactive on LinkedIn or, communicating with other companies or students and stuff like that. I would say LinkedIn is not for, like Hanna said, like keeping it professional. No arguments over political views or different things like that. Again, it is something that everyone can see, especially if they check your profile. So I can see what post you like. I can see what you share. I can see what you've commented on. And sometimes they are a deal breaker for me as far as getting into an argument about a politician or something like that. Everybody has an opinion and I totally understand it. Again, probably a little bit more so for Facebook, less on LinkedIn, because again, everyone that's looking for you, if you've applied for positions, they're doing their research too. I mean, not just at Epes Transport, but everywhere that I've worked at, we've always checked LinkedIn profiles.
Another thing kind of going along with the negativity is, I've seen people comment on a post and say, oh, well, I tried to apply there, but the recruiter never called me back and that's a shitty company, or just something so negative like that. And it makes me think, okay, well, if they're going to say that about another recruiter, what are they going to say about me? So, keep the negative comments off of there. Don't treat it like it's a personal conversation, because like Ashley's saying, everything is visible. Another thing is kind of going along with the opinionated activities is if you're messaging a recruiter or even on a call, this kind of goes all hand in hand. Try not to talk bad about past companies, past work experiences, internships. Even if the internship you had last summer wasn't that great, don't put any of that on LinkedIn. Just keep it simple. You might not want to rave about it because you didn't enjoy it, but still put it on there, be professional. I've seen a lot of profiles that, say, oh, this wasn't right for me because of blah, 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 or I left because of, and I'm like, oh, you don't need to really put that on there. If we ask, you can definitely come up with an eloquent way to say why you left that position, but I would not put it on LinkedIn.
Great tips. Hanna, did that spark any more thoughts for you as well?
I mean, I think we kind of hit the nail on the head there. It's definitely where I think I'll go back to it again. Like, you just want to sell yourself in the best light possible. And this is a great way for you to do it. So paint yourself, obviously, and within reason, not going above and beyond to superficial or, ultimately who you aren't, but, really, I think kind of hitting upon those key points. And ultimately, I think that's a great way that it will be a gateway to get you the interviews that you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so let's go back to some more positive. Can you all think of a time where a candidate just had something outstanding on their LinkedIn or Handshake profile that really ultimately helped them secure the offer, maybe over some other candidates?
I can go. I love seeing if someone's like the reviews. So if you've worked for an internship and your boss is open and willing to putting a review on there as far as, how great you did or how you helped with a project or something, like Hanna said earlier, when you note those projects on your LinkedIn profile, to have someone kind of reiterate how great it was. I've even had professors in the past that have given me one. It just speaks a lot, because when you're in an interview, you're talking about how great you would be for the position and experience and stuff, but to have someone kind of vouch for you just kind of solidifies for me that what you're saying or what you're telling me or what I'm seeing on your LinkedIn profile, it all meshes, it all fits. Whereas if you're great in an interview and or you're terrible in an interview and someone's giving you a review, maybe you're just having a bad day, maybe it's an off time. And everyone has those. Interviews are not perfect. They're not perfect at all, especially if you don't have a lot of practice and you don't really know what to expect. But to have those reviews and everything on there, I think I look through those as well, just because they don't have to do it. And they're taking time out of their day to write one of those. And I think it speaks volumes.
And I know this is something that you kind of have later on down the list, but, the blog entries as well. I do scroll all the way down and see, like she said, the recommendations, referrals. I know that some people think, oh, well, why would I write a blog or, something like that? But even just what you share or any projects you've been a part of, extracurriculars, a lot of that's listed all kind of in that bulk area at the second part of your profile. And we do look at that. I had one intern I hired this past summer, that he wrote a blog about his internship experience at his past company. And it made me think, like, wow, he was that engaging in the last company he worked for. Imagine what he can do for us. And so something very simple that took me a minute to read, kind of did give him an edge, compared to the other candidates I was reviewing for that role that he took. So a lot of times I feel like some of you college students kind of second guess, like, oh, I don't want to post that, or, if you're second guessing it, maybe have somebody like, in the career services read it first, or one of your professors read it first, or even a peer proofread it and then post it. But I do think that if it's relevant to your career path or your degree, then it doesn't hurt to post some of those blogs.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I definitely do look at the recommendations, and I think those reviews, especially if you had a great working relationship, I mean, that person's probably going to be a great reference that maybe an employer is going to call later. And if that already gives us an insight to your working relationship, I think that's a huge plus. In terms of also going back to like activity, I mean, if you had an internship experience and you ultimately, write even a post about it, doesn't have to be necessarily a full-on blog, but even just saying like, I had such a great experience with this company this semester, or this past summer, it was so great. Shout out to my mentor, shout out to my manager, you guys were awesome. That generates a lot of buzz. And I think even from like peer to peer, that's going to get people interested. People are going to see that. Of course, they're going to like it, which I think in the nature of that feels really great. People are interacting with your post, but the actual breadth and depth and the span that can actually reach to other people. Maybe it's a friend of a friend who saw that you liked it. They're also looking for an internship, and that starts to spin their wheels and like, oh my gosh, that company looks so great. I would love to be able to apply. Tell me about your experience. Or wow, that manager sounded really awesome. I think that sounds really interesting. I don't know where I want to go in my career. Any chance that you can put me in touch with them because they seem really awesome. So I think also thinking about from your own sake and for a lot of what you're even going to find, what you interact with, we can see what you like, we can see who likes what and all of that. And it definitely can lead to, I think, a lot of opportunity, even just amongst all of you guys.
Sure. That we've had activity mentioned a couple of times as well, whether it be following companies, commenting, liking posts, all of that is visible on LinkedIn. So next question, a candidate interviews with you, whether it be over the phone or again, via video chat or Zoom or something like that. Do you want them to connect with you on LinkedIn? And if so, what might be the best way to go about that?
I mean, I'll jump right in because I think I do love that interaction. Anyone that I do have a phone conversation with, I always say at the end, hey, connect with me. I'm here as a resource. I'm constantly posting things about Beacon Hill. And even if you're just curious about what we have going on real time, I mean, we run Instagram live sessions every Thursday. We do a variety of just like online panels. I'm constantly posting and reposting things of just like our branding and our marketing. So I think for allowing people to stay engaged with us, I always say connect with me. And then also as potentially even moving forward in a process, I think we might touch upon this, but ultimately I want people to feel like you are allowed to do your professional stalking. As much as we're doing that on our end, look up the hiring manager who you're actually going to be connecting with. Maybe even send them a connection if you have a great conversation afterwards and say, hey, it was so great to chat with you. That just, I think, goes an extra step. It goes the extra mile. And I think it, one, helps you prepare and knowing exactly who you're talking to. And two, feels really great to be like, wow, that conversation actually meant something to someone else. And, I think that really allows you to stand out as a candidate. So I say absolutely connect with as many people. It's not like, I think from our end, sometimes like you friend someone on Facebook and it's like, oh, why'd that person friend me? Like, that's weird. It's not weird at all. You're building your network. You're absolutely figuring out your whole professional network, and that's going to take time. But I think connect with as many people as you can, because you never know who's going to lead to who.
I would second that. I mean, I never, like she said, I've never thought, oh man, that's weird that they connected with me. I actually kind of use it as a tool to see who is truly interested. So after this career event that we're going to have Thursday, if by the next week I haven't gotten an email or a LinkedIn request, if I ask them to, I take that as a sign of that student wasn't truly interested in working for us. Out of all the career event, or out of all the companies that they met at the career event, we didn't stick out to them. And yeah, sure, I'll still email them or reach out, but it shows genuine interest. And those, usually 4 or 5 students that really take a lot of effort to compose a message or connect with me or the hiring manager, those are usually the ones that are going to get the first call for an interview, more so than just somebody that just handed me their resume.
I agree. I think connecting with someone, the employers and the people that you meet at the career fairs, even if you've participated in the mock interviews, connecting with everyone after that. I had a gentleman that I did mock interviews for 2 years ago for App, and he's in the supply chain club. We connected, and he's not happy where he's at. So he reached out to me through LinkedIn to see if we had anything, and we've scheduled a call, and we've talked a few times since then. So it may not be someone you want to, or it may not be a company that you're interested in right now, but if you connect with them, you get to see, like Hanna was saying, you get to see their marketing stuff. You get to see everything that comes through because it's on your homepage. And then eventually, if you want to make a career move or you see a position that you're interested in with that company a little bit down the road, you still can see all of that stuff and you can apply. I think the biggest thing, it's easier to get me through LinkedIn or on my cell phone. You're probably not going to get a quick response via email, just because of meetings and stuff like that, but I get everything notification wise on my phone. So huge to connect on LinkedIn. I would say that's probably the biggest thing for me. And it shows interest.
All right, students, those were all welcome, and please connect with me on LinkedIn. That is what these ladies are saying. Do not be scared. Please hear them when they say that. All right, so we have about 8 minutes left, and I would love to open up some time for our attendees to ask specific questions, or maybe something we didn't cover, maybe something our panelists touched on, but we didn't get to have them elaborate on. So if you're able, and again, in a space where you can unmute your mic and ask that question, please, by all means, do that. If not, type it in the chat box, and Taylor or I will see it, and we'll make sure that the panelists get that question.
So I do have one question. How important is the premium, to have premium on LinkedIn? Should we have it or should we not?
From a personal perspective, I don't know that I had it before I was an actual recruiter. I definitely connected with people that I interacted with, because especially if they openly told me to connect with them, it was an open door invitation for me to connect and have questions and stuff, and we would schedule stuff. But I would say connections are probably going to be the easiest, and that's how once you're connected to someone, you can interact with them easily. I don't know that I used it before I was a recruiter and started looking for people on LinkedIn. I don't know that it was something that I really would find value in. That's just my opinion. I don't know that everyone will have to say one, but it wasn't worth the money for me. If I was going to connect with them anyways, I could easily talk to them without having to pay for it.
Yeah, so I would recommend buying premium and investing in that if you are in certain industries such as sales or something where you want to put yourself out there, or if you're an entrepreneur, if you have your own business. But if you are just simply looking for a job or, open to networking, I personally wouldn't invest that much because it is a little bit pricey. But I would say, if you're in dire need, you're heavy on the job market, maybe try, they usually do a premium preview for a month or something. Try it out and see, a difference. But personally, like Ashley, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that. LinkedIn will probably get mad at me, but I wouldn't personally get it unless you're really, really needing to hit heavy on networking.
I would echo that too. On a college student's budget, I think there's a few other things that might have to take some prevalence there. I do think you can absolutely still have so many of the functions, maybe not as many of those nitty gritty filters that we could see on our end, but I think absolutely, to Hannah and Ashley's point, it's really where you can still network. You can message out to employers, you can connect with them, you can see who's in whose network. I definitely utilized that when I was in my job search senior year. So I don't think necessarily, but if you do get the free trial, hey, why not? Try it out. See, maybe it is going to be for you, but it can definitely be pricey.
Awesome. All right, I think we have time for a couple more questions. Anybody else have any questions they want to ask our panelists? Yeah, Emily. Oh, Emily, we can't hear you. Okay. All right, Emily has sent it through the chat box. So how important is it to send a message via LinkedIn when you connect with someone? Great question, Emily.
That is a good question. I look at all the messages because it kind of jogs my memory, because there are a lot of students that you meet. And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, like we were talking about earlier, and I think Hannah brought it up, the picture doesn't always, you may not look the same or exactly the same. It may be an older picture, or it may be, you might be not as dressed up in the picture or something like that. So it definitely jogs my memory when you send a message, it was great to meet you at the career fair and talking about Epes or something like that. But other than that, just the connection in general, I'm probably going to reach out to you anyways, just to kind of jog my own memory. and maybe even schedule a call. So you can send it just to say like, hey, it was nice meeting you today or last week or whatever, but I don't know that in full detail, it's that big of a deal.
I would say that if you are wanting to kind of initiate a conversation, go ahead and, yeah, definitely send a message, because personally, I get at least a handful a day of connection requests, and I'm sure Hanna and Ashley could say the same. I mean, us recruiters, especially in this job market, we get requests like crazy. So if you want to kind of stand out and be somebody that we're going to talk to like that week, definitely go ahead and send a message. But if you're just connecting for like, hey, in the future I might be interested in Rush or Epes or whatever, you know, then just connect and don't feel like you have to send a message. Unless you're like, hey, I want to get an internship now, you know. So that's my advice on the messaging. Don't feel like you have to unless you're trying to initiate a conversation.
Yeah, I would echo what they said. I don't have too much to add. I think it's kind of case by case, but especially if you're, you know, really excited about maybe what that employer does have going on, or you're just curious and you want to set up like an informational call, give a bit of context. Like, hey, I saw that you're a recruiter. I looked at your profile. It looks like you are hiring for sales. I'm super excited about sales following graduation. Can we connect? It doesn't have to be a novel. And actually, I think LinkedIn does have a finite amount of characters that you can actually add. So make it thoughtful. You know, ultimately, if you are sending that message, as for kind of what you really want to get your point across, because that will make it spark, I think, a little bit more than as opposed to just, you know, saying, hey, I'd love to connect sometime.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you, Emily. Thanks for that question. All right. I want us to wrap it up. I want to be mindful of everyone's time as we move into the evening. But I do, panelists, want to open it up for if you have any last comments or remarks or wisdom that you want to share with our students or attendees. Please go ahead and share that, and then we'll get to our giveaway.
I would say, to reiterate everything, connect, especially if it's an open door and they've told you to connect. The biggest thing for me as well is take advantage of everything that you are given as far as mock interviews. Even if it's a company you're not maybe fully interested in, take advantage of the mock interviews, interact with everyone at the career fair. Again, even if it's not a company you're interested in, the more you do this, the more comfortable you're going to get with your elevator pitch. And it's going to benefit in the long run. It's going to make you a lot more comfortable with talking to employers. You're going to kind of get an idea of some of the generic questions, and then maybe even some specific questions that you've never heard, so that if you're ever asked again, you're prepared. But Walker gives you so many opportunities to get involved and to get comfortable with it all. Take advantage, because a lot of schools do not offer half of this.
My last thing would just be connect. I mean, it is really never going to come across to an employer that you feel like you're stalking us or that it's weird, because it's not. I mean, we want to connect with you just as much as you want to connect with us. That shows interest. It shows excitement for what we have going on at our companies. And ultimately, I mean, like I said, your network will grow exponentially just based on connecting with people. So follow companies, do some research. If you connect with an employer, then follow up with them. You know, let them know, hey, this was great. Thanks so much. You know, I'll stay in touch with you, and we'll, you know, ultimately kind of see where this can lead. But I think there are amazing things that you can do by having just an online presence within LinkedIn, and it will ultimately lead to a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I'll just echo what they said. And also in person, I don't know how many of you are planning on later this week going to the event, but don't be shy, put yourself out there, talk to as many companies as possible. I remember whenever I was in college and I, you know, kind of got one of the first people I talked to, I got an internship offer with, and I wish I would have talked to more companies and kind of been more open, because I didn't really enjoy that first internship that much. So, you know, keep in mind that some of these companies are going to pitch you a lot of, you know, what they want you to hear. Do your own research, you know, network as much as possible, and yeah, ask a lot of questions, figure things out. Don't just say, oh, well, I've talked to a few employers, time to go home. No, talk to everybody. That would be my advice.
Awesome. Thank you, ladies. And again, a shameless plug for our career event. Later on this week, we have more panels and workshops both tomorrow and Wednesday. We have our in-person career fair on Thursday and a virtual fair on Friday as well. At our in-person fair on Thursday, we are going to be having professional photographers taking headshots. So if you do need a nice professional photo for your LinkedIn profile, or maybe you need an updated one, shameless plug, come get your picture taken and we will send it out to you afterwards. All right. Without further ado, Taylor, will you please spin the wheel and tell us who is winning the Amazon gift card so generously given by Epes?
Sure. And then I think someone just asked what time the career fair was, and it's from 1 to 4, correct? Okay.
Yes, the in-person fair is from 1 to 4 on Thursday. The virtual fair is from 10 a.m. to noon on Friday.
So, okay, let's see who our lucky winner is. Oh, and it's Gabby. Yay.
Yay, Gabby. All right, Gabby, if you will please stick around for a moment so we can get your contact information and all of that good stuff. And that concludes our events for this workshop. So thank you all so much for attending. Thank you so much for your attentiveness and your questions. And special thanks to Hanna and Ashley for taking the time to answer our questions after hours. We so much appreciate that. All righty. Everybody have a good evening, good afternoon.
Bye. Thanks, guys.